The meeting is being live streamed.
Excellent.
And YouTube is just about to start. There we go. You're good to go. Thank you.
I should wait for that prompt. I should know. Welcome, council colleagues, members of our community, to council meeting number 25, Tuesday, May 17th at 6:30 p.m. Council did meet just a short time ago, very quickly at 6 p.m. for a closed session matter. So we have already adopted the agenda this evening. I will, however, ask before we read the land acknowledgement for any disclosures of interest in regards to the agenda this evening. Okay. I know, Councillor Barclay, you had declared a disclosure in closed, and I think that will remain in closed. All right. So I will then ask Ms. Councillor Wilson to read our land acknowledgements. Of course, the municipality of North Granville is embarking upon a truth and reconciliation process. It began in earnest about a year ago. One of the things that we do at the beginning of every council meeting and many community meetings is read the land acknowledgement. All of council takes turns reading the land acknowledgement. So this evening, I would invite our newest councillor, Councillor Debbie Wilson, to read the land acknowledgement, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The municipality of North Granville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe. We honor the historic relationship of the Haudenosaunee and the Huron-Wendat peoples to this land. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who now call North Granville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship with all Indigenous peoples, and we look forward to continuing this conversation and fostering the path towards reconciliation.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Wilson. We appreciate it. We are very excited to welcome 3 delegations this evening, and that's a good sign that we're coming back to life in the municipality of North Granville. Not that we were ever asleep. Of course, there was lots and lots of activity, but of course, with the easing of restrictions, there's thankfully some in-person opportunities to gather, and I know that's certainly a relief to many who live here in North Granville. Before I do that, though, I didn't mean to mention Busker Fest. I don't think we ever had a delegation for Busker Fest, but it is this Saturday, May 21st. It's certainly a big deal in our community. It's Kempville's first ever Busker Fest. There's been some fabulous promotions throughout North Granville. A myriad of local and regional talent will be part of the Busker Fest, and then we will have a Juno nominee, a renowned musician in Canada, Miss Emily, who's a blues musician, doing the after hours concert at the North Granville Country Club. So I know there's lots of excitement about the event, and it promises, we'll cross our fingers, the weather is going to be awesome. I know it's going to be good no matter what the weather, but I want to make sure it's on everyone's radar screen. Without further ado, of course, is another exciting event coming up, and that's Kempville Pride. So we're very excited to also learn about the big plans for Kempville Pride. So I believe I am welcoming Ms. Melissa Button and Ms. Crawford as well for that meeting, for that delegation.
It's just myself tonight. Yes. Okay.
Welcome, Melissa, very much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. All right, so here to talk about North Granville Pride celebrations for this year. So next slide, please. So the significance. So we use Pride Month as a way to be seen in the community. It harnesses a momentum, and which is sometimes stalled, equal rights movement, to show off our pride. Pride's not just about equality, it's also about acceptance. So our mission is to live in a community without fear or judgment, and in a spot where there's a sense of belonging and a connection for our LGBTQ2S+ members. And then the visions, as well as an equitable community free from all forms of oppression. Next slide, please. So the history, so where we started. So back in 2018, Holly Brown, a local mom, petitioned the municipality of North Granville to raise the pride flag for the month of June. It was accepted, and that was the start of Pride in Kemptville. In 2019, a group of volunteers, approximately 15, came together and planned the very first Pride Parade. And that was, I believe they had about 2,000 folks in attendance that year. Obviously not wanting for that momentum to end, several of the core members then created the Kemptville Pride organization. We're in the midst of actually a name change to NG Pride to make it even more inclusive for all of North Granville. And this year, or last year, I should say, we also received funding from Women and Gender Equality Canada, where we were able to hire an executive director who was able to implement a strap plan for us so that we can continue to grow and evolve over the next few years. Next slide, please. So what we've been up to. So like I said, the strap plan was completed, and that told us quite a bit about what the community is wanting and needing. A big piece is education, both online and in person for either folks in the community or families. And then having local and online resources just so folks have somewhere to turn to, either when they're questioning or when their family members are needing help. There was also, they want to see a reduce in social isolation. So that's something we're working really hard on right now with specific programs. So next slide, please. So the current state, so obviously it's to provide education, promotion, and networking opportunities. An example of this is today I met with a local school principal, and we were talking about implementing different support groups for students in our community. Another way we're doing it is Megan Cummings from Kemptville Stress Relief Center is actually facilitating a queer peer support group that we're looking to get started in June. She's a certified psychotherapist, and she's wanting to help queer parents and kids who are questioning. So that will be a really wonderful addition in our community. Next slide, please. So one of the reasons we're here, the importance of flying the flags. So in years past, we always requested to have the pride flag and the transgender flag flown. This year, we're looking at just implementing the progressive flag. So folks right across the board are part of it. So for a lot of people, their identity is not something that makes them subject to violence. Daily affronts against their dignity and the denial of basic human rights. On the other hand, for people with minority, sexual, and gender identities, the fight for equitable human rights in Canada and worldwide continue to be a decades-long struggle. So the whole point of this is in hopes of asking once again for the municipality to fly these flags. Next slide, please. So how to celebrate? So we have two events coming up. The first one, Saturday, June 11th, is the flotilla. This is truly, honestly, just a fun event. This one isn't even so much about advocacy. It's about just getting together with other folks in the community and showing our pride and having fun. That will be starting at Curry Park at 11 a.m. and headed towards Old Town Kemptville and then back. And then Saturday, June 12th, we will be having our Kemptville Pride Parade. That will start at Kemptville campus, go down Prescott Street, down Reuben, and then end at Riverside Park. where we will have a big after party, and there'll be food, there'll be some drag shows, lots of fun. We will also be at other events kind of throughout the month. And in July, we'll be doing some farmers markets and other markets. So we're quite excited. So just keep an eye out on our social media through Facebook and Instagram and our website to see kind of what's coming up next. Next slide, please. And that's about it. Does anybody have any questions?
Thanks so much, Melissa. We appreciate it. Any questions, colleagues, at this stage? Melissa, my one question is, how is it going with the organizing committee? Have you been able to attract the same number of volunteers as a couple of years ago? I know some people are still pandemic wary, lots of enthusiasm, of course, to get out to these larger community events, but what's been the experience so far?
You know, it's been good. A lot of folks have stepped up, which has been really nice. So right now I'm holding a weekly planning committee meeting. We typically do it via Teams, just for obviously just to keep it simpler. A lot of us are parents, but also for just the COVID safety aspect. But actually a lot of new folks have come out, which has been really, really nice. Today, with talking to the schools, they're expecting the Upper Canada District School Board is hoping for about 100 participants just from the schools alone, which is absolutely phenomenal. And we've had quite a few sponsorships come in as well. So it's going really, really well, really well.
Good, good. I know that the Granville Pride event, I guess in 19, was well recognized for being quite family friendly and inclusive. And could you just speak to the elements of that, I think, afternoon event?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. So same thing. So very family friendly. We're going to have Kerbalicious on hand and Martin's Munchies providing food for folks. We will have family friendly drag shows happening kind of throughout. Moose FM will be there playing some music for dancing, etc. We will be having a reading time with some of the drag queens as well for the kids in the afternoon. There's also face painting and airbrush tattoos happening as well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Councillor Strachan, is there anything else you want to add? I think you've been part of the volunteer team for some time now.
I've certainly been engaged with this group. They've been quite active. I'm not going to take any credit for any of this work. Melissa and the rest of the board have really taken on a lot this year and really taken on a new take on Pride as well with the flotilla. So I think that'll bring some new energy in there. It'll be a very active weekend. There's a lot going on, so it's going to be very exciting. Yeah. So thanks a lot, Melissa, and yeah, for the rest of the group, for sure. You guys have done a great job.
Thank you.
Awesome. And I also understand that, as I recall from 2019, you do get some residents from neighboring communities where there may not be a Pride event, given that sort of rural identity we have. So I expect that may be the case again this year. Would that be?
Yeah, absolutely. We've gotten a couple of registrants from Ottawa, Smith Falls, Brockville. We actually, a big thing about this year is we've partnered with Kiev Pride in
Right. Oh, we might have lost her. We lost her. Councillor Strachan, do you want to speak to that? Because I know you've had some of those conversations.
I can only speak very off the top for that. I know Melissa suffers from. Oh, there she is. She's
there you are. Okay.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I was like talking and I'm like, no one's moving. I think I'm frozen. Sorry. So I'll start over. So we've actually partnered with Kiev Pride this year as well, out of Ukraine. We've been talking to them quite a few times, trying to raise funds for them and help them with their shelters. So there's actually a possibility that we'll actually have one of the refugees who's in Toronto walking with us as well, because we're actually dedicating the whole parade to them this year. I'm just trying to figure out logistics. The person just landed in Toronto, I believe it's a week and a half ago. So we're just trying to let them get settled. But the plan was for me to drive down, pick them up so they can enjoy their first Pride celebration in Canada.
Excellent. I'm sure Kiev Pride certainly appreciates that, given all of the turmoil and dislocation of residents. All right, I don't see any other hands, colleagues. So if there's no other questions, then I will just read the recommendation and look for a mover and a seconder. Ms. Button, are you good? Is there anything else you need to add?
Oh, no, I'm good. Debbie was just waving. I wasn't sure if she was.
Just through you, worship.
Yes, of course, Councillor Wilson. I didn't see you. I apologize.
Sorry, no, I'm always late to the game. That's why I never get a word in. Melissa, were you able to engage anyone to get the crosswalk painted yet, or have you got a date yet?
Yeah, we were talking about that with Mayor Peckford, and I know we were looking at a date. We were hoping hopefully before June 1st. I don't know if we ever got that squared down though.
My understanding from Ms. Dunlop, our Director of Public Works, is that it would be done in advance, and she's here. Welcome, Ms. Dunlop.
Thank you. The crosswalk actually was to be part of the United Counties of Leeds and Granville painting program. So we are trying to get it done prior to the beginning of June. And I hope to be able to commit to that in an absolute way. I have phone calls out right now.
Okay.
Were you able to get any benches done too, Melissa?
No, we weren't.
Okay. Right.
I know it was on the list, but
okay.
Our biggest, yeah.
Okay, no worries. Thanks.
Thank you.
And maybe just Ms. Dunlop, if we can achieve the painting of the sidewalk certainly before the Pride weekend, that would be fantastic. So I know you'll work your magic.
I will do my best. Thank you. I have 4 calls out right now.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Any other hands? Seeing none, I'll look for a mover and a seconder for the following. Whereas the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms recognizes sexual identity and sexual orientation as human rights issues. Whereas the LGBTQ2+ community is growing in the municipality of North Granville. Whereas on May 19th, 2020, Council established the month of June in perpetuity as LGBTQ2+ Pride Month in the municipality of North Granville. Be it resolved that Council arranged to fly the progressive Pride flag in consultation with the LGBTQ2+ community among the flags at the municipal center and other pertinent locations, and that the municipality of North Granville actively support Pride Month virtual activities, and I guess non-virtual activities and festivities during the month of June. Heather, I'll trust that you're looking for a mover and a seconder, is that correct? Okay. Mover and a seconder, colleagues. Councillor Barkley, Councillor Strachan. Thank you. Any further comments, questions? I think we have a lot of demand on our flag poles, Ms. Button, so it's great that we're down to a progressive flag that reflects all the different diversity within the LGBTQ2+ community. So thank you. All right, motion is on the floor. I'll call a question. Seeing no hands, all in favor? Thank you. All right, that passes. Thank you, Ms. Button, to you and many of the volunteers and staff who are making this happen. We look forward to seeing you. And we'll have a painted crosswalk. We'll get there.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all your support always.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care.
Excellent. Okay, colleagues, we'll move on to another exciting, momentous occasion in our community, and that is participation. It's no surprise to anyone listening to this meeting that we won the title last year with tremendous support and engagement from the community. And I believe participation is back to tell us how we're going to defend that title and just carry on the momentum. So am I welcoming Ms. Allingham as the speaker this evening?
I think you are, Nancy, or sorry, Your Worship.
All good. And I know that we have Ms. Hurlbert and Reese as well, who is working closely with Ms. Hurlbert on the call. Is that right?
Yes. So I just wanted to let Debbie breathe a sigh of relief here. Reese is actually presenting the slideshow this evening. And then if council has any questions, Debbie can help to answer those. And I'm here as well for that.
That is fantastic, Tammy, because I was thinking, oh my gosh, Melissa had such a beautiful slideshow and I am ill prepared. So Reese, you go right ahead.
Welcome, Ms. Brown.
Yes, thank you guys. I'm Reese Brown. I'm a Parks and Rec intern. I'm just gonna give the presentation today. So can you guys see and hear me?
You
okay?
can. Yep.
Okay, perfect. So can I go to the next slide, please? So Participation is a nationwide competition held during the month of June with the aim of getting communities active and motivating individuals to join physical activity programs, as well as maintaining the physical and mental health of everyone in the community. So the community with the highest activity log will receive the title of the most active community, and that also comes with a $100,000 grant. So as you guys all know, we won in 2021, so we're committed to defending our title once again this year. So next slide, please. So Riverside Park is going to be the location of our launch event for Participation. It's going to be the Healthy Living Expo. And this is going to be an opportunity for the community to connect with businesses and organizations that promote positive physical and mental health. And we're also going to have try it sessions open to the public, as well as group activities that get people moving. And these activities will also count as minutes for North Granville, so we can get off to a good start with that as well. So next slide, please. So we want to get as many businesses and community members as we can to promote this event. So if your business is active, you can log your minutes through the month of June. And if not, we'd love to see businesses set up special events to engage people in physical activity. And we also want to encourage clients to get involved and post on their social media too. And we need to do even more this year to defend our title. So next slide, please. So who can participate in this challenge? Anyone can participate in this challenge, whether it is an individual, family, or business. Any activity will go towards our score. We just need to make sure that everyone is engaging, who is engaging in this is registered to do so. And there will be registration on the next couple slides. So next slide, please. So how to register. So it starts on May 18th and it can all be done on the Participation website, and use North Granville's postal code so the active minutes are added to our score. And the email down below, recprograms@northgranville.ontario.ca if you need help with any of that. So next slide, please. So how to track your minutes. So once June 1st hits, you can track your minutes on either the Participation website or app. Individuals can enter the activity and how many minutes were completed, and organizations can put in the date, number of participants, and the average number of minutes completed if it was like a group of people doing it. So next slide. So what counts towards active minutes? Any activity can count as active minutes, like playing sports, doing yard work, going to the gym. Those are just some examples of what counts. Our goal is just to get people active, whatever their version of physical activity means. We just want to get people moving with this. So next slide. So the calendar of events, all events and activities happening will be on the North Granville Participation calendar. You can access it at the website below. So www.northgranville.ca/getactive. And then I think we have one more slide left. So social media. So pictures and videos can be sent to us to be included with our finalist submission if we are in the running. Participation can be tagged on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we're also using the hashtags Community Challenge and GetActiveNG, just so that everyone around Canada knows that we're in the running for this. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, I'll pass that on to whomever.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Brown. Is there anything you would like to add, Ms. Ellingham, at this time?
I don't really have anything to add. Reese summed it up very well in the presentation. You know, just we want to hopefully, you know, get the same amount of excitement that we had last year. I mean, it was COVID times last year. I mean, it's still COVID times now, but things are certainly settling and people are getting out and doing more things. So it'll be interesting to see how we fare this year compared to last year. I think there's an opportunity to log even more minutes with, you know, sports activities starting and schools back in session and all that. So yeah, we just want everybody to get moving and log those minutes. And I think the expo on June.
Oh, we lost you, Debbie. I think you muted by mistake.
Have an opportunity to have a off really like that last year with all of the public. So it's going to be great. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'll look for hands, council colleagues, if there's anything you want to add. I want to thank Ms. Brown for the presentation. I know my observation in being on the Health, Wellness and Fitness Committee, of course, which was one of former Deputy Mayor Jim McManaman's interests, priorities, is that there remains a lot of enthusiasm. We also had such great participation from some of the daycares and senior centers, community living, hospitals, schools, and I understand from the Montessori that they were able to actually get a grant from Participation to hold another dance party, which is one of the way they celebrated having logged a certain number of minutes on behalf of their kids. So I know that there's lots of good outreach now to those daycares and to all of the schools. We had great participation by elementary schools last year, but not so much high schools. But as a consequence of a strengthened Parks and Rec team and some other relationships that we're building, I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to get some of the high schools on board as well this year, which I think will strengthen the cause. Certainly we were a surprise win last year. So we definitely want to show that that wasn't a one-off. I'll recognize Councillor Strachan and then Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Debbie and Reese, for the presentation. Thank you, Tammy, in the background. It was a lot of fun last year. I really enjoyed that slideshow presentation. I didn't realize those goofy photos would be sticking around, but anyway, I'll have to up my game for this year. I just wanted to say that I'm looking forward to this. I think it was a lot of fun last year. There was a lot of great participation, and I look forward to the friendly competition amongst my council colleagues like we had last year. So I'm sure we'll just have to up our game even more to get the top spot in our little team. So thank you all very much.
Councillor Wilson.
Yes, thank you for through you, Mayor Beckford. Thank you, Reese, for your presentation. Debbie and Tammy, I just want to reiterate that we have a huge gardening community here.
Yes, yes.
And this is the year of the garden, launching on June 18th. And we're reaching out to some of the gardening groups. They can log their hours doing gardening, and it counts towards active hours. So everybody will be planting their sunflowers and their marigolds for the IPM. And the year of the garden, the color of the flower is red. So we expect to see a lot of that, and those hours will tally. There were a lot of, it's an exciting event. A lot of people got on board last year, and it was thrilling to be the most active community, and to receive that kind of funding for recreational things in the area. So I think that we need to step our game up, and because all the other communities are going to be competing against us and trying to defeat us, but we won't let them, will we? Let's just keep going.
Well, certainly in our conversation with the CEO of Participation last year, we did learn that you can seek the title of most active community for more than 1 year. They certainly didn't discourage any community from doing that. They also noted that part of the strength of our application in seeking the title of most active community, because we were shortlisted as one of 10 communities, was that because there was a wide variety of ways in which people could participate. So to your point, Councillor Wilson, any and all activity minutes counted. So that inclusion across the board, every age and stage, was certainly key, I think, to our success. And that was noted in the communications from Participation. So there's lots of ways to be active in North Granville, there is no doubt. Councillor Strachan, over to you. Oh, and you're on mute, Councillor Strachan.
It's all right. I thought I clicked it. Pardon me. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And so, yeah, the variety of activities is important to remember that basically anything counts. You get out there and do something, then log your minutes. And just another reminder, and perhaps a shout out for the Soraya Yoga Festival is also in mid-June. So that would count as well. And that was very well attended last year. So hopefully any residents who are there are keeping that in mind to track those minutes as well as part of the competition.
For sure. Okay, well, North Granville has nothing if not grit. So I think we're very excited to absolutely defend that title and show what we've got, not just in a pandemic year, but beyond. So Ms. Brown, thank you very much for coming. Ms. Holbrook, I don't know if there's anything you have to add before we read the recommendation.
I think I would just extend a thanks to Kieran Martin, who is not with us, but part of the team and did the majority of work preparing the slideshow for this evening. So he is another one of our summer student interns, and you'll be seeing a lot of Reese and Kieran through the month of June as they lead some participation meetups and events for the community. And I think what I really like as a professional in Parks and Recreation about this challenge is the fact that there is such a direct impact, not only on the physical health of the community as a result of this challenge, but mental health as well. Just it was what we needed exactly when we needed it last year as we were living through another shutdown. And I think that that's what really spoke to the community. And I know that we continue to have those needs, and the mental health impacts will go a long way as we continue to enjoy the challenge. So thanks very much for your support.
Thank you. I should say on that note that the North Granville Community Foundation has reached out about raising awareness about mental health in all of its forms. And in the Health and Wellness Expo, I will be hosting a walk with Mayor Nancy on the morning of the Health Expo on the Saturday. Of course, all of council is also encouraged to come along, but we'll be doing a 1.5-ish kilometer walk, or 1.1, Tammy, you can correct me, a walk around the periphery of Riverside Park. And we'll also be walking a somewhat known, but perhaps surprise trail at the back of Riverside that's largely forested, that some people know about and some people don't. So that's a way to start off your participation in participation, or talk, find ways to talk with other members of your community about the benefits of physical and mental health. Tammy, what's the length of that walk again?
It is 1.5 kilometers.
Perfect. Okay. So there'll be more coming on that, and that's in partnership with the North Granville Community Fund that is interested in establishing a mental health fund in North Granville, specifically to facilitate access for youth to mental health services. And while we have some fantastic services in our community, you can imagine it's never enough. And the impacts of the pandemic in terms of some of those longer term mental health stresses are just beginning to be evident. So more information on that. And then finally, I should say tomorrow, council will be heading to Crozier Park in Oxford Mills to in fact formally announce where our funding will be going for last year's participation dollars, and to also raise awareness about the launch of Participation 2.0. So that'll be happening at Crozier Park tomorrow. And we're thrilled to welcome, I think, 2 classes from the Oxford on Rideau Elementary School. They're going to come out and get us moving and take us through some exercises. So I'll read the recommendation, colleagues, and that is that council receive the presentation titled Participation Community Better Challenge and support participation through promotion in the community. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Barkley, Councillor Wilson, thank you. Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor, please raise your hands. Good. Thank you again, all of you from the committee and from our recreation staff team for being here this evening. Thank you. All right. Now I have the pleasure of welcoming Mr. John Hack. I think you're here, Mr. Hack, if I'm not mistaken. Welcome. And you are here to report on an indoor aquatics feasibility study. Just as a bit of a preamble, this is a study that in some respects followed the Parks and Rec Master Plan that had been completed, I think, at the end of 19, if I'm not mistaken. And certainly the prospect of an indoor aquatics facility in North Granville has always garnered some significant interest and some significant concern, because obviously indoor aquatics facilities can be expensive. And this study that we asked Mr. Hack and his team to complete was really to reflect on some of the longer term planning implications of a potential aquatics facility. And how other communities have done it, and what the fiscal and community impacts are. So certainly, Mr. Hack, thank you very much for being here. I know many of us have had the opportunity to carefully review your report, and I must say it was extremely well written. So thank you, and obviously Mr. Guy, who facilitated your introduction to various stakeholders in North Granville. So over to you.
Okay, well, good evening, and my apologies for being a little bit late in the
Okay.
order, so I appreciate that. And great, the presentation's up there as well. So what I'll do is just start by a couple of introductions and some thank yous to Mark and Tammy on their assistance and review of an earlier draft of this as well. And I think we've addressed a number of the questions. So just to follow on from what you had said, Madam Mayor, this is the kind of work that you do after you do a master plan, where there are outstanding questions, where there is community interest. I'll just start off by saying that the master plan has the most difficult of tasks, in that it's addressing everything, and it's allowing the community expectations to be fully aired as it should, but then it has to make some choices and recommendations. And in the game of musical chairs that sometimes is the priorities for recreation master planning, you have to make some choices. And so the indoor aquatics, as a wonderful item for any community to have in terms of fitness and health and wellness, it was positioned as being something that would happen after the next 10 years of the master plan. So the master plan was 2019. Anyway, a long way of saying that there are always good reasons to assess in more detail what it actually means, because none of this, I can tell you from the work we do across the country, none of this is a binary equation. It's not build or not build. It's what are the circumstances that may lead you to build. And the one thing that I've learned, and I think is the one thing I would impart this evening to everyone, is it's never too early to start planning for these things, because they take a long time to come to fruition. So with that, let me just ask if the slide could be moved, and I'll run through what is a fairly complicated report, but I think it's got some clarity to it. We were asked to assess at the next level of detail a feasibility for indoor aquatics, because the master plan had said, essentially based on the growth that is expected in and around Kempville, it's too early to have such a facility given the costs to operate, let alone the capital costs, just the cost to operate it and the deficits that these facilities acquire, unless, and it was fairly astute of the master plan to point out, unless you can find partners. And so part of the exercise here is for us to do exactly that. But Mark and colleagues made our task very clear, which was great, in that we want an assessment of where we are today and where we'll be tomorrow in terms of supply and demand. Where are the pools? Where's the demand coming from? If you build it, are you going to face undue risks in terms of usage and therefore costs? And then operational choices. And that really is a case of, are there natural partnerships, and I underscore the word natural partnerships, that can emerge? If you can build in a way that is collaborative, meaning every one of the partners can see the value in it, then that is the strongest way to build, as opposed to driving forward and saying we're building it and then asking for cost share solutions because some residents from other municipalities or from other institutions end up using the facility. So we've addressed that in the report. And then I think probably the most interesting issue is where, if you were going to build, would you likely, and again, and I'm unable to say it's a clear-cut answer. It is something that will evolve over time. But we'll go through some of the headlines of that as well. So next slide, please. So the consultees, this was very important. And again, my thanks to the town for giving us the the contacts. So we spoke firstly to both the French school boards, both of which are kind of represented on the site or very close to. I had a great conversation with the English Public School Board as well about its planning. Similarly, spoke to the YMCA and were able to have a very clear conversation about the conditions under which the YMCA would venture into partnering on indoor aquatics. So not just running programs such as they're doing now, but for other things, but actually becoming invested in the facility. And then another very, very enlightening conversation for me was with the executive director of the Kemptville campus. I had done some work on the Alfred and Plantagenet campus a couple of years ago, so I had a basic understanding of the scale of these former agricultural colleges. But that one was a very useful conversation. Then we didn't get to speak to the hospital. We weren't successful in reaching them, but I just put them on the page there because the hospital is always going to be a potential user of any kind of fitness facility that you have. Next slide, please. So going through these sites, obviously they need no introduction, but this one is kind of the obvious example of creating a multi-use recreation center, because if you were to able to latch a new pool on to the municipal complex around the arenas, you really do have a very significant multi-use recreational and cultural facility. So I'll leave my comments at that for now, but it was obviously a leading candidate. There are some constraints in terms of how you would do that, and the report lays those out, and I can return to them a little later. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is one that you'd have to have, in our view, a very good reason why you would want to go forward with this, notwithstanding that you have some exciting plans for developing a new pool, clubhouse, splash pad, I think, and then I think I saw in some of the plans an outdoor rink as well. So this Riverside Park is due for some upgrade anyway, and the notion of enclosing a pool, if that was the concept, it's obviously public land. You could build there, but it would be a standalone. It wouldn't make a lot of sense. But enclosure of the pool has been done elsewhere. The report lays out some of the pros and some of the cons associated with that. And nominally, at least, it is an option for you to consider if you really were keen to develop quickly and at the lowest capital cost. Next slide. And this one is perhaps the most intriguing of all. The more we got into it, the more we could see the evolving partnerships that might be there. Very difficult, though, in our view, to be able to succinctly say that the Kemptville campus, with all of its buildings, and some of which have some heritage aspects to them, is the site to go forward. And it comes down to how much work needs to be put in to align the interests of the various users, including you as the owners of the grounds, to make this happen. So I'll get onto those details a little later. But those are the three sites. All of them have some. Well, I'd say the two of them, the campus and the municipal center, have some real potential associated with them. Next slide. Okay, so onto the reality of this is, and we've taken the position, and I think council would just give us the indulgence here, that if you're going to build it, you're going to build it the right way, and you're going to build it so that it's going to last. It's going to be a 40-year building. It's not going to be done simply to be able to tick a box that there is an indoor pool of some nature for the community. So this would be what we call a municipal Class A pool. So it would have a certain scale to it. It would allow full programming. It would be staffed by a full management team and lifeguards fully certified. And depending on how you build it, you could even host some competitions. You can have competitions in some of the smaller pools. At the level of, this would serve the community, but as you'll see in later slides, it's going to serve areas more than just the municipality of North Granville itself. We're not going to build, you know, a destination here, as you might see in some of the big cities, but it is going to be a community plus type facility. That's ultimately where you're going to go. It's going to be, if you just follow the metrics, that probably means you're going to be building around sort of 25,000 square feet. So if you envisage that, it's sort of 2/3 of the size of an arena in terms of its overall sort of scale. 25 meters, you'd have some lanes, and typically if you were to do that, you know, a good provision would be sort of 6 lanes of use. In other words, you'd have some rectangular element that's 6 lanes. You may have a second pool that's a leisure pool. You may have, and you see it all over the Southern Ontario, you may have a pool that has lanes and then morphs in the same tank into a leisure component. So there's all sorts of ways to look at this, but we look at it from at this level, a square footage. You know, how big is this facility going to be, and that sort of drives the cost. So I think you're looking at a 2-tank design, plenty of very good modern decking space. What we mean by that is enough room between the pool and the wall, not like when we were growing up swimming where you were back against the wall and it was a very small building. You're going to have enough, so you could even program, you could even have some lessons or take little toddlers and safely have them on the side of the pool. These are all modern standards, and that's what you would build, a pool that has a modern level of amenity to it. That's what people are going to demand. Otherwise, they are going to vote with their feet. They will drive up the highway to Ottawa or down to any of the other facilities that get built. Next slide. I'll try and speed up a little bit just to convey the information. So there are plenty of best practice examples. I don't need to belabor them. I certainly don't want to focus on the capital costs, because there are 2 things to say about capital costs. One is they're kind of all over the map in 2022, as you know, in terms of any of these kinds of construction projects. The other aspect is you have more control than you might think. When you look at a piece of paper here, you think 2019, gosh, that was $40 million. What are we in for? That's how that project was conceived and delivered. You have control over the scale. I just indicated what I thought was a reasonable scale, but you know, who am I to dictate exactly what that is? There would be an exercise that you would go through at an appropriate time to determine exactly what should be in the building. And those are the ways you control the capital costs. So I put this information on there simply for that, for information, but not to try and alarm anyone as to the overall cost. They're not cheap. We certainly would assume that you would fund this through a combination, if you could, from provincial and federal grant funding that hopefully is going to remain out there in the years ahead. And you might use some of your development charges and other things that you can bring to bear on this as well.
Mr. Heck, though, I just want to clarify that in this instance where you're featuring this pool, the costing was for a twin pad, ice arena, multi-purpose community room, community library, active living center, kitchen, and concession, right? So that was the total.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. This is just the pool we're showing here, but it speaks to an issue. So yes, you're absolutely right. So that $40 million, you're getting obviously all of that for it. To the issue of how you build pools, it's fairly clear, I think, in our report, you don't build them as a dedicated facility. Do not build a shoebox in a field. It will not serve anyone's purpose. You want this to be part of a broader recreational offer. Next slide, please. Laurier Brantford, and this one is just a great example of how the YMCA came together with the Laurier University, came together with the city of Brantford and came together with a regeneration project for downtown as well. So just a good example of 2-tank designs there, very much a regional type facility, but always good to have some examples like that in there. Next one. So this is where I wanted, without getting too technical about it, to indicate that there's 2 ways to look at whether or not you should build, or you have the means, or you have the right to respond to the public and go forward with developing a pool. And that is, one is the standards approach, which, you generally see out there the idea that there are a certain number of people that need to be in a community to support a pool. And it's absolutely correct to assume that. But the numbers do vary. If you're in a bigger city, you might be looking at one indoor pool of some nature for 50,000 people. In a smaller community, it could be anywhere from sort of 20 to 30,000 people. I think the master plan used a figure of 30,000. So in those kinds of master planning projects, you have to sort of pitch some standards approach. But what I've seen around the country is, depending on the particular circumstances and needs of a community, these standards can often reflect other things, not just the fact of population equals the capacity to take a deficit on a facility. So it's important that we don't just look at the standards approach at all. When we do that, looking at municipal growth, it's obviously impressive growth, but it gets you to around 21,000 by 2031. I think one thing I would just sort of comment on generally is that population projections generally are going through a bit of a revamp because of what has happened with the pandemic in terms of people making life decisions to maybe move. They're a bit more footloose and can move away. But the big point here in the report is you have to look at this in terms of how you can sustain a facility. And it doesn't mean that you lock yourself into the municipal boundaries, because that's not how people conceive of this. So the better approach is to take one based on utilization. So how many thousands of person visits are you likely to get over the course of a year? That translates into revenue to the extent that you can control your costs. With fixed costs and variable costs, you can start to see what the deficit picture will be. And then ultimately it is a case of, is there a case to be made to support a certain kind of deficit? And obviously if you can partner to some degree, you can start to potentially even reduce those deficits as well. Next slide, thanks. So what we did is, firstly, we just said, here's your drive time from the center of Kemptville. The sort of green line there is the 30-minute, and there aren't too many pools within that 30-minute limit. You almost get there to the Gallipo Center in Smith Falls and on the edges of Ottawa, but between 30 and 45 minutes, there's quite a few. So obviously for a lot of people, driving 30 to 45 minutes is just a fact of life in order to get to these facilities. So the question though becomes, what is a likely market area that you could draw from? You can't draw from this whole area because these pools that are dotted around are going to draw themselves from the areas. So you have to adjust. We're trying to work out how many people currently might support a pool. In other words, it's the cadence of travel. If it takes you 30 minutes to get to a pool, then when you get to 16 minutes, they're going to, like a watershed, they're going to gravitate to the other pool, but at 15 minutes or less, they're going to gravitate back to Kemptville. So next slide, if you could. So when you go through that process of sort of playing with all the catchments, your current population, we've got a little 15-minute drive time there that you can see with the black boundary. You're up around 24,000 now. You're at 27,000 by 2031, and that's the primary trade area. There's always what we call a secondary trade area, which someone says, let's go to Kemptville today and use the pool, and that's in a broader area around it. So let's just say you're at around 30,000 people that you could put. So you're in that area where if you had a financial case that you could support, there's nothing on the population side that would I think you would not be criticized for going forward with a suitably scaled pool. I think that's fair to say, but it does always come down to dollars and cents. And so we want to we've shown you some of the standards here, and that you're in the ballpark. Certainly by 2031, you're very much in the ballpark of being able to support something. What does it look like financially? So if we could just go to the next slide. Yeah, so service standards, put them off to one side. Financial costs and potential partners, that's where we wish to focus. recognize that deficits in recreation, and I'll say this, within certain frameworks, that's what you expect. There is a certain amount of tax support that goes to recreation. There's a certain amount of user fee pay that goes to recreation and other services, and it's getting that right balance. You will often hear, and I'm not here to be an advocate for building pools, but to give some objective opinion. When you look at a pool in a municipal setting and run and operated by a municipality, they are, the heaviest deficit producing recreation facility, more so than rinks. But they're not libraries, they're not other kinds of services. They do generate some revenue. But when you look at the number of people that come through the turnstiles over the course of a year, the deficit that you end up funding per capita, so per person, starts to look quite different in many circumstances, so that they don't have such a heavy cost attribute to them. And you can start, and when you ally then the value associated with indoor pools in terms of really cradle to grave services for youth through to the older facilities, year-round facilities, you can start to see the qualitative social and economic development perspective. And of course, having a pool is one of the quality of life benefits. So, that is part, we always say that recreation facilities in particular are the other side of the economic development coin. You can sell land, and bring in industry and so on. You can also have great facilities, and that will bring people into town and business owners as well. So put all these things together, that is the basis to go forward. Next slide. So with that, then I won't belabor this one, but you'd be looking to get, an annual person visit total. So you might have one person that goes every day all year. So that person would count for 365 people. And when you do it that way, so the number of times people go through the turnstile and use the pool, you get a person visits ratio. And you can see some of the ratios there on the page. Let's not worry about Belleville, but you can see that it's going to be a multiple of the population, but you're looking at around sort of 40,000. We've done some financials on you sort of getting around 50,000 people through the doors on an annual basis, which I think is a reasonable target for a few years out. So if you go to the next slide, that then becomes the basis for running some operating numbers. Now, this assumes you as a municipality own and operate it, and it assumes that you have a full community mandate to not, have exorbitant prices. In other words, a standard municipal approach to pricing for the community. And when you run through those numbers, a reasonable approach to wages and benefits, essentially a unionized environment, most likely, a reasonable approach to utilities. What we have not factored in here is if you were to latch this onto the arenas, you may get some utility cost savings because you can create some district heating where the heat produced by the rinks through the cooling process can be used to heat the natatorium or the pool itself. When you run it through, you end up with a deficit. And just as our colleagues at Monteith in the master plan had kind of given a range, this is what you would typically expect. If you were to partner with other institutions, there's always a question of whether there'll be operating cost sharing. And I think that's the task at hand going forward, or whether they just pay rents to use the facility. The YMCA, just to focus on them, they have many models around Ontario of taking a certain level of risk, meaning that they would share some of the operating burden, not just delivering programs, but actually incur some of the costs. In this particular circumstance, probably they would be providing expert services. Their goal is to generate higher revenues. So overall, you as a municipality may benefit from having a good service. It may not necessarily have to be a membership model that are typical to the YMCA. They just run the facility. And the idea is that you would contract with them because they're able to get your deficit down. So, one way or the other, these kind of are the deficits, and then they can be debated at the edges depending on who the partners are. So it might seem like a large number, but in the world of aquatics in municipal environments, this is a reasonable expectation of what you could achieve. Next slide. So capital costs, as I said, it's very dynamic at the moment. So we weren't going to go through an exercise and try and generate capital costs because they'd be out of date between the time we submitted the report and today. But I think you are looking at we've been and the report has a number of examples, but be looking at sort of at least a year or two ago, sort of $600 a square foot as a total project cost. So they are expensive. And so the proposition is that you want to sort of create enough information and intel going forward that when those grants are available, you're ready to go. And that really is the message. There's nothing wrong with planning fairly quickly so that you're ready to make application to get that level of capital funding that's going to make the project, bring the project within grasp. Next slide. So in terms of our conclusions, I will say that let's just go through them and I'll just ad lib from it. So firstly, I think that you've got a fairly fresh recreation master plan done by a reputable company in 2019. It talks about the timing of the pool. If you take the next level down for the pool, I think there are some good reasons to start thinking about being ready so that you could have a pool feasibly open pretty much in sort of toward the end of this decade or a little bit later. And who knows, if you get enough partnership and enough momentum and the capital is there, then you'd build before. That's how this works. So the real message is start to think about some planning with the next cycle of council. That long-term build, which would be consistent with the recreation master plan, requires midterm planning. So you don't have to rush out and do it in 2023, but it's not a bad idea to sit down with your potential partners and start to work out what things might look like in a few years in terms of capital priorities. Don't build it as a standalone. And I say that only in case there is a drive to perhaps enclose the outdoor pool or do something of that nature. I think the municipal center is obviously a little bit further away than it's a bit far from the madding crowd in the sense of where a lot of the rest of the community is located. But it is a tremendous site for efficiencies and for multi-use recreation. And it's also the site that you have most control over. So if you wanted to move forward with this site fairly with a certain level of speed, this is where you control everything. And so you really can set the timing of this and how you would do it and how you would fund it. The Granville campus, though, I think does it really because you took the risk of taking the property a few years ago, and I think it's obviously it was a very strategic decision to do that. You want to try and build this into the mix, and so far from just saying the municipal center is the best approach financially, there are conversations about the Granville campus. I think there's a master plan that's been done that probably needs to be re-looked at in terms of how you might position a facility like this. There are school boards that are interested, and the real issue there is to make sure that it's easy to talk about partnerships with school boards, very difficult to make it happen, but I think it's alignment of where some of their capital priorities are going to be. Because if you could develop a pool in concert with other investment by the school boards, one school board is looking to build a gymnasium now on campus, I understand. So that's just one example of things do happen. So I think there's conversations that should happen at the level of senior management to see if there's an opportunity to frame out what development at the campus would look like. I think that's it, unless there might be one more slide. So. Nope, that's it. So thank you for your indulgence and patience in me running through it, but hopefully I've answered a number of your questions with the presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hack. I think you condensed a very long report fairly succinctly, so appreciate all of the insights. Before I go to council colleagues, I was struck by that analysis on page 3 that while often municipal aquatic facilities are sort of seen as the most burdensome in terms of a municipal recreational facility, through that usership, if it's well calculated and you build the right facility, you can reduce the cost considerably so that it is among the least burdensome facilities. I know I'm a hockey mom in the community and I benefit tremendously from our double ice pad arena, and I'm very conscious that the subsidies to our municipal arenas and this building, which houses the arenas, are also quite significant, and I think around the same range of about 500,000, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Guy. So I think we have to accept as a premise that we do subsidize heavily recreation in the community in all of its forms. So fascinating to see how you, as an expert in this field, parse those numbers. I had a quick question, and then I'm looking for council colleagues to raise their hands, so feel free to do so. I was really struck by those municipal efficiencies when you think about this municipal center from which I am doing this meeting as a possibility, given its visibility in the community and the fact that it's obviously one of the more popular recreational destinations, indoor recreational destinations. Do you regard the efficiencies in terms of heating, potentially having staff that maybe are both assigned to sort of ice pads and to, for example, aquatic facilities? I don't mean lifeguards, of course, but sort of maintenance and other staff. Do you regard those as particularly significant? I hear what you're saying about the campus, and as former interim chair of the campus, I fully appreciate your desire to really flag a partnership around capital costs, if not operating, but certainly capital, because it's the capital that really is certainly part of the equation here. If you can't offset some of those capital costs, it's very, very difficult to make this happen. But just reflecting on, the differing realities, and they're quite different. I was struck by the language in the report around sort of creating a central recreational hub, if you will. Does that tip the balance? Who's to say? But if there's anything else you'd like to say on that, I'd welcome it.
Yeah, well, just in response to your worship, I think you would, the Kemptville campus starts to make sense if you're making a commitment to that as a community hub generally, right. and you're pouring investment in over a generation to get that up to where it needs to be. If you look at this through the lens of and it's reasonable to ask, we want the next piece of major recreation infrastructure being an aquatic center, then I think all eyes are on the municipal center to see how you would do that. Because absolutely, if you would come through a central foyer and you're going to have shared services there with staff, there's going to be some savings there. You'd have to do the technical analysis to see how much heat you can generate to serve the pool. But that, there would be some efficiencies cost-wise. You would be designing it so that it would be a separate structure, but it would be linked to the building. You'd have to obviously, do some site work to make everything work out. But at the end of it, what you would have would be a very modern, twin pad cultural center, municipal office, and aquatic center all in one location. And there's no doubt that would be a very significant facility. Whereas at the campus, you're going to have to imagine what that partnership looks like. And that's where, someone that does strategic planning, I don't want to take that off the table, but someone that does financial analysis as well, it's pretty clear that the municipal center is where you would probably pay most attention in design terms at this point.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I'll go to council colleagues and reserve a final comment for after we do a round. Council Barkley, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Peckford, to Mr. Hack. I really appreciate this study. It's a great read, and I'd encourage everyone to read the detailed study. I think it's a great foundation for a community discussion, and obviously we've already started that discussion based on what you reported. I'm curious about your comment, and I do appreciate your recommendations as well that have come through your presentation and are contained in the report. It's not just a dry feasibility study, but you've weighed in with your expertise. So what you refer to as midterm planning, I can see us coming back on an annual basis to look at this feasibility study to sort of test the waters in terms of where we are as a community in terms of population growth. We are growing quickly, and population projections are sometimes wishful thinking, or they could be conservative or overly optimistic. When you talk about midterm planning, what are you talking over the lifespan of 10 years? We might be ready. Would that be 5 years out? I appreciate how long it takes to develop proposals. Proposal development of this nature can take a long time. So I'm trying to get a sense of the timeline.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, you've caught me out. I was kind of fence sitting a bit on that, and so the language is pretty vague because I think it depends on your priorities as a council going forward, right? You're going to have things that you need to address next year, but I think if you had time and resources available, you would get on with the idea of trying to flesh out exactly what partnerships look like, what designs might look like, and sort of proceed on that basis. So I think as I said, I don't think anyone, at least from my side of the table, would be critical if you were to start that process of understanding what your capital obligations might be to build. And I get the sense that the alignment between the capital programs of the different school boards, that's going to require early conversation and continual conversation, and even then it may not work out because that's just the nature of things. And so from a blinkered point of view, you want an aquatic center. I think it's a fair question to pose. When should you start planning for that? And I think the other side of the election, in midterm could be 2023, something like that. And they do. You're right. The gestation period for any of these facilities it's often very, very slow, and then it happens very quickly because things come together. But you can spend a lot of time doing feasibility after feasibility analysis and updates on feasibility. Whereas if you say, take a decision maybe after the election that here in principle we want to proceed, you just have to find the right time and we'll have a work plan towards it. That's how you want to do it, because it will take a year to design and then it'll take a couple of years to build. So that's 3 years right there. And you have to work up to that process. So, I think, in my head, it's sort of by 2030, by the end of the period, that's when you want to have this thing open. So you got to work backwards.
Okay. Councillor Strachan, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much, Mr. Hack. I appreciate the points that you've made, and I don't have any direct questions for you. I think I just have a few comments based on the points that you've raised. The comparison, I don't know if my council colleagues, a 25-meter pool, 6 lanes, is akin to what Minto has. So to give you an idea, if you've been to the Minto pool, which I know the mayor has, we've had our kids in swimming lessons there before. It's a sizable facility, and it's a very modern place, to the point of what the facility looks like and where it's located. I think it is very important to have it co-located with other services. When I look at a place like Minto, which has ice pads in there and it has a pool and it has other gym facilities, it's a place where parents can bring their children and multiple things can be happening at the same time. And because of its design, it's also a place where parents are willing to stay during the lessons and so on, and you don't feel like you're sort of off to the side in a corner or uncomfortable or anything like that. So I think that there's a lot of thought in the design process that needs to go into it to not just make it the location, the co-location being important, but also the design, that it's a facility that is, a place that people want to be in at the same time. So I think the idea of, I don't know where we would put it with close to the municipal center. It's pretty tight on space, but I'm sure that there's a way to fit things in. So, I think it seems possible anyway as a good location. One of the ongoing debates about pools, because it comes up this time of year, is when is the outdoor pool opening? Where can my kids take swim lessons? Is why don't we have one here? The community has changed. We've got a lot of young families, and needing a facility like this or something like that in our community is growing, and there's a want for it. And the one thing that we always get stuck on is the cost. How much does it actually cost? And having a fair assessment of numbers, I think, is very important. So I thank you for that. It gives us an idea of what we're looking at, and just exactly where the emphasis needs to be placed on partnerships, because this is not something we could go at alone. We will never have a tax base that big, and if their tax rates ever got as big, we would be in big trouble. So I think looking into those partnerships and continuing to pursue those efforts, I think, would be something that would have to happen in the very near term. And then, I think all that said and done, your points about, exactly what options are available and, what key stakeholders within the community should be engaged and their thoughts on it are very important as well. So I appreciate that the time has been taken to have some of those conversations as well, and at least capture some of the initial thoughts on that. Overall, thank you very much for your presentation. It's very useful.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other hands. So colleagues, if there's anything else, again, of course, I want to emphasize this was really truly a feasibility study to take a sort of closer look, given repeated requests from the community. Every time we engage on recreation or the future even of the campus or the future of various municipally owned green spaces or lands, inevitably this comes up. So I think it was fair, and certainly something I committed to look in a very practical way at what are the conditions that support the establishment of an aquatic facility. Of course, this is something that I agree should be better tackled in a sort of post-election environment where we will, I think, better understand what the community's appetite is. But certainly many of, I think, the analyses, much of the analysis Mr. Hack brought forward is very relevant. I just wanted to clarify, I mean, my understanding, and having looked at this in a previous life, is that there are the co-location model as a possibility, certainly in terms of creating operational efficiencies is excellent, but the community partnerships with the YMCA, which is growing its presence here and which operates, right, many facilities or staffs many aquatic facilities right around the province, is certainly something that we could pursue with the YMCA. And I'm assuming, based upon the consultations you had with them and their recognition that we're growing and that the appetite for recreation here is quite significant. And certainly that seems to be one of the first partnership conversations you would want to pursue. And to some extent, I assume you had that conversation and there was an openness to a potential.
Well, I mean, sorry, just through just in response, we're able to have very honest conversations with the YMCA because we come at it with a certain level of understanding on both sides, and I think they would say right now, no, they wouldn't want to take any risk. They'll obviously, if you built it, they would be interested in programming it.
That is my question.
Yeah. Right. So they would be a partner for sure. We look at it, the question is, at what point would they build a gym on the side of it, or create a different model that might not necessarily be at the municipal center, and they're not there yet in that model. Right. But they're obviously an important partner for you in recreation delivery, and I know they'd be very supportive of anything. I just don't think there's any risk that they would want to take at this time.
At the present time, in terms of being the lead partner, if you will, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. But from operating programs, to your point, which is where they seem to have an interest in this community,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to clarify with you, given your conversations, and we've all had
Yeah.
them, that certainly that's one that's worth pursuing.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, my conversation was very much that they're very excited about North Granville, and they'd
Yeah.
be willing to provide programming, etc. But in terms of these other models that you see where they are putting out capital and taking risk,
Right.
they would not be there yet.
Yep. Sounds good. I see Mr. Guy. So Mr. Guy, I'll recognize you. I just do want to speak to infrastructure and capital costs. Certainly, I think this council had a mandate to secure infrastructure funding federally and provincially for County Road 43. And it was quite unfortunate that County Road 43 became our primary and dominant preoccupation. We saw other much smaller communities like Prescott aggressively pursue the same pot of money for a major recreational amenity. And it's too bad that North Granville, in some respects, had to put all of its eggs in the infrastructure basket for roads, right? And that road, County Road 43, absolutely needed that investment, and we're happy to be a partner to that investment. But it just underscores, I think I'm saying this to my council colleagues, because I think moving forward, now that we have sort of much of the funding underway for County Road 43, and we've done our part to that extent, it opens up, I think, the dialogue around where we may be able to pursue, not of course this year, but in future years, depending who's around the council table, we may be able to take a fresh look at some of that capital funding, because there were a number of different streams available for infrastructure funds. There was a road stream, there was a recreation stream. So we had to make a choice about where we were going to pursue some significant dollars. And of course, County Road 43 was absolutely our first priority. But moving on from that, I think there may be, to your point, Mr. Hack, there seems to be some appetite amongst federal and provincial governments to potentially continue to fund these things. So watching that landscape would be absolutely critical.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Guy.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to thank Mr. Hack and his team at CR Planning for putting together this very detailed pool feasibility study. John was excellent to work with. He made all the deadlines. He was very open to our comments and questions that we had in the first draft. And I think he's provided council with a very detailed report and definitely some good recommendations to move forward as we look at a future indoor pool facility. So thank you very much, John.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob.
Okay. Council colleagues, if there's nothing else, then we'll receive this third report. Heather, is there a recommendation attached to this one, or is it just a delegation?
There is a recommendation that council approves the draft indoor pool feasibility study provided by CR Planning and Management.
Okay, I'll look for a mover and a seconder then. Thank you, Council Barkley, Council Wilson. Any further comments or question before I call the vote? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Good. Thank you again, Mr. Hack. It was a very well considered report. I really appreciate the very thorough analysis. Thank you. Take care. All right, colleagues, that takes us through our delegations, of which there were 3 this evening. I'll now go to the consent agenda. As you know, consent items listed on the consent agenda are considered routine and no longer require further discussion. As a consequence, they are enacted in one motion. Council colleagues, is there anything on this list of largely minutes, as well as some reporting requirements and the Oxford Ridge subdivision that you would like to pull from the consent agenda as proposed? Seeing nothing, I will look for a mover and a seconder for the adoption of items under the consent agenda. Councillor Barkley, and a seconder, please. Good, Councillor Stark again. And again, there are 7 items, council colleagues, so they're there for obviously for you to see in plain sight. If there are no questions, I'll call the vote. All in favor, please. Okay. Good. Thank you very much. I will draw your attention to the fact that under that consent agenda, we also have a membership appointment to our tourism advisory subcommittee, which is excellent. I know that committee is working very, very hard and welcomes its newest member. So I'll go to the office of the CAO. I do not believe the right to disconnect was on the consent agenda. Mr. Dyke, are you here? Someone on your behalf will be presenting that?
It was a consent agenda item.
It was.
Consent, Your Worship.
Okay, I don't see it stipulated that way under the consent agenda, hence my confusion. Oh, right to disconnect, number 3, there it is. Okay, good stuff. Municipal tax rate and BIA levy. That council approve and enact bylaw 4722 to set the financial municipal tax rate for the 2022 tax year. I believe Mr. Ogarende is here for that presentation.
Yes, that's correct, Your Worship. Good evening.
Okay, welcome.
So I'm here today to seek approval from council to approve and enact 2 bylaws. The first one is for the municipal tax rate for 2022. According to the Municipal Act, council must approve a final tax rate for all properties within the assessment area for the municipality. And at the budget deliberations back in March, council had approved the municipal tax rate to be 0.74% for the financial year 2022. And also, council has to approve a bylaw recognizing the BIA budget, which was set at 25,500 for 2022. And this rate will be shared across all of the different commercial properties within the improvement area. So I'm happy to answer any questions on these matters if there are any.
Colleagues, anything on this particular matter? I don't believe there is, Mr. Ogarende. We had a very fulsome discussion on the budget back in March, so this is largely a formality. Council colleagues, the recommendation is that, as read, council approve and enact bylaw 4722 to set the final municipal tax rate for the 2022 tax year, which isn't changing from our decision in March, and that we approve and enact bylaw 4822 to set the Old Town Granville BIA levy for 2022. And again, that tax rate, if anyone forgot, was 0.74%, if I'm not mistaken, 0.74%. Okay, and that was obviously the proposed increase. Councillor Barclay, over to you.
Yeah, not speaking directly to the motions, I apologize, but I'm wondering if council might invite the BIA to come in and give sort of a mid-year report in terms of how they're doing with their budget. I know they're operating on more than just $25,000, and I think maybe at the end of the summer it would be worthwhile to get a sort of a mid-year report about where they're at.
I think we would welcome that. So maybe Ms. Babcock-Cormier, you can initiate that request.
Yes, Your Worship.
Okay. Anything else, colleagues, on this matter? Seeing none, then I will look for a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Strachan, Councillor Wilson, thank you. I will do a final call for questions, comments. I would only comment that, Council, I feel positively that we were able to keep the tax rate for another year. Tax rate increase, I should specify, well below 2%. That's been a steadfast commitment of Council, and I'd like to recognize Mr. Dyke and Mr. Ogarande's significant work making that happen at a time of high inflation. So not an easy balance, but appreciate all of the effort that went into that. I'll call the vote then. Seeing nothing else, all in favor, Council? Good. Thank you. That passes. So Mr. Ogarande, you can proceed accordingly. Thank you.
So I'll just move on to the next matter, which is the Heritage Reserve Fund policy. This is also a subject that came up during the 2022 budget deliberations, where Council directed staff to look into setting up a policy to manage and administer the Heritage Fund reserve. And during the budget deliberations as well, Council had approved a transfer of $75,000 as a kickstart to that reserve fund. So I'm bringing forward this policy right now for Council's approval, which will pretty much kickstart that process, and the guidelines on how that reserve fund will be managed going forward, what will constitute a transfer to the reserve, and what will constitute a transfer out of the reserve as well.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ogunrande. Certainly, this was of significant interest to Council as well. And I know that Councillor Barkley and I sit on the Heritage Committee, and there was lots of appetite amongst committee members at the Heritage level to ensure that this policy was established. So I'll look for any comments at this stage in terms of the policy itself, colleagues. Are we generally satisfied? Councillor Barkley?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, to Mr. Ogunrande. I'm just looking for a little bit of explanation on what is meant by uncommitted year-end surpluses. I note that part of the revenue would be a transfer amount. It's according to your report, determined by Council of uncommitted year-end surpluses. What would be? Do you have an example of what I'm looking for more detail on what an uncommitted year-end surplus is? Thanks.
Yes, through your worship to Councillor Barkley. So pretty much at the end of the year, once all of the final expenses and revenues have been recorded in the municipality's books, we do what's called a year-end reconciliation, which is basically converting the books into the public sector accounting standard of reporting, basically. And when all of that is done, usually a municipality will end with a surplus. And the term uncommitted is just to say that the surplus is not as a result of projects that weren't executed during the year, but more as a result of efficiencies in operations during the year. So Council usually will provide direction as to how that surplus is administered. And by this policy, we're saying that Council will then direct staff to transfer a portion of that uncommitted surplus into this specific reserve fund.
Just to follow up,
yes.
During this most recent budget, did we go through that process where we were told of what the uncommitted surplus was? And
through your worship,
yeah.
We usually do that process at the end of the year once the books have been audited by the auditors, the external auditors, and that's when the surplus is determined and then brought forward to Council.
So we haven't done that.
No, we have not done that.
Okay. All right. So this will be our first opportunity to take a look at that and possibly transfer some funds into this reserve, or we've already.
Your worship.
Yeah, we've already done that, right?
Yes, because at the budget we had determined that 75,000 will be transferred for 2022. So this policy will in effect kick in from the 2023 financial year.
Great, understood. Thank you.
So just for my clarity, Mr. Ogunrande, is the allocation of the $75,000, the approximate $75,000 on a per year basis, dependent on generating a surplus?
Actually, through your worship, actually the 75,000 for 2022 was actually a direct transfer from the general reserves into the specific reserve.
Yes,
as a one
understood.
time.
Yeah.
And then
moving forward, yeah.
Then going forward, it would be based on the amount of surplus that is available to be distributed. If at a time where the surplus is not as much as we would have probably expected, then Council can make that determination as to what to do, either skip a transfer in one particular year and make up for it in the following years. So I guess the summary is that there are options available to Council as to how the reserve fund is funded in any given year.
Okay, so it's not, but the allocation isn't dependent on generating a large surplus.
No.
internally within the municipality.
No.
It becomes an option to fund the $75,000 allocation.
That's correct, Your Worship.
Okay. Mr. Dyke, is there anything else?
Yeah, Your Worship, just to follow up on Mr. Organ's comments is so the $75,000 was the seed money, and the policy creates a
Yes.
ceiling as how much the maximum put in. Council doesn't have to put anything in, right? I mean, because the theory of it being is to build this reserve fund without going back to the tax base. It would in our practice would be is that fund would grow based on surpluses that through efficiency we create. Anything specific like we did this year would be talked about during the budget process. It's not an automatic 75,000 or an automatic 50,000 going in. It would be all be part of the consideration as by recommendations from Mr. Ogrande and myself with this and other reserve funds we have in the municipality.
Okay, I see. I think the concern has been historically, right, with facilities maintenance of heritage properties. Oh, my computer almost fell over. The concern has been that that reserves, if you will, may have been underfunded or the capital capacity never existed to the extent that would ensure those buildings were well maintained. Of course, we have fewer of them now, but I guess it's that balance. And what I'm hearing is that every year that conversation would be had with council with the ceiling have been defined to be 75,000.
That's correct. And so that goes by, it's from a fiscal management standpoint, because we have a number of these areas that require investment from the municipality and balancing that over the operational needs and the pressure on the community as well.
Okay. So tell me from your perspective, what is the value of the policy? Does it help to better regularize or structure the sort of, preservation of funds for heritage, right? Versus sort of, does it better establish that sort of precedent to ensure that we're always contributing to the fund? Is that where you see the value?
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, through your worship, that's one value, administering what comes into the reserve fund, and it also administers what goes out of it as well, right? So the two avenues to use funds from this reserve, either through the budget process, we can also look at considerations of what's coming into the reserve fund, or through a resolution from council at a regular council meeting to say specific activities should be directed towards the preservation of those heritage assets.
So it really provides guidance. So it structures investment as well as sort of the generation of the reserve, if you will.
Yes.
Right. Okay. That makes sense now. I better appreciate what's happening. Okay, good. Anything else, council colleagues, on this? Council Barkley, go ahead.
Yeah, I just thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to thank the CAO and Mr. Ogrande for coming up with what I thought was a really elegant solution to this that didn't put extra burden on the taxpayer, but does show a commitment by the municipality to heritage within the community. And I think that's essential, as you know, from your experience in raising funds from different levels of government, that unless we have some funds and some commitment on our half, it strengthens any application for upper level funding. So I do appreciate both Mr. Dyke and Mr. Algarande for putting this solution together. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Yes, certainly I think we welcome the further replenishment of the fund. Is replenishment the right word, or the further, I guess, allocation to the fund, certainly year over year, given whatever else we may be facing in the economy and within, within the municipality of North Granville. So I'll look for a mover and a seconder then when it comes to this particular item. I see Councillor Barkley and Councillor Strachan, thank you. And Ms. Baccarat-Cormier, I've lost the motion. So if you could read the motion for me, please, that would be appreciated.
Yes, Your Worship. Be it resolved that Council approve the Heritage Reserve Fund policy in accordance with the direction provided by Council during the 2022 budget deliberations.
Excellent. Thank you. I see no further questions, so I'll call the vote. All in favor, please. Good. Thank you. Okay, I think next we may be hearing from Mr. Grande in terms of COVID relief on penalties and interest on water bills. Do I have that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Your Worship.
Okay, welcome back.
Yes, so back in August 2020, Council had approved the establishment of a program called the COVID Relief Program, which is basically for staff to provide a structure by which the municipality receives requests from the community on relief of penalties and interest on overdue tax and water bills. And in 2022, following the lifting of the emergency order, it was prudent at the time to bring forward a report to council to give a status basically of what has happened in the last 2 years with the program, and to also recommend to council the discontinuation of the program, given the fact that the emergency order has been lifted. So for the water wastewater department, we received 32 applications between the time period, resulting in a total forgiveness of just over $2,748. And on the tax side, we received 18 applications, resulting in a forgiveness of $1,347.63 as well. So I'm happy to answer any questions as well on this.
Indeed. And to be clear, we were forgiving or deferring, if you will, penalties and fees,
we're forgiving the fees.
The fees attached to late payment.
That's correct, Joshua.
Right. So we did not relieve anyone's actual water or tax bill, but we did relieve people if they were unable to pay on time and they were being hit with a penalty fee.
That's correct, Your Worship.
Okay, I just want to be crystal clear about that. Okay. So council colleagues, obviously a fairly modest amount was spent. Any questions or concerns in terms of the retiring of this program? Seeing none, I'll look for a mover and a seconder then. I'll just scroll down. I'm going back and forth. I apologize. This is that we received the report titled COVID Relief on Penalties and Interest on Tax and Water Bills and approved the discontinuation of the COVID Relief Program. So I'll look for a mover and a seconder before calling the question. Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Seconder, Councillor Barkley, thank you. Of course, I should have said at the beginning that Councillor O'Sullivan has been away for much of May, which is why she's not with us. We look forward to welcoming her back later this month. So I'll call the question, colleagues. All in favor? Good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Grande. I note that you've had 3 items there. So we'll move on. Office of the Clerk. We have dealt with that in the consent agenda. And of course, the appointment of the Tourism Advisory Subcommittee's newest member is Darlene Collin from my local markets. And Ms. Collin continues to run a series of very successful local markets that bring people certainly to the campus and draw from quite a number of different municipalities in the region. So look forward to seeing how those go this summer and fall, and welcome her to the Tourism Subcommittee. Nothing under planning and development this evening. Under Public Works, colleagues, we've already adopted the Oxford Ridge subdivision assumption, and that's for a small subdivision. We've dealt with the Parks, Rec and Culture item this evening, which was the indoor pool. Nothing under Emergency and Protective Services. Under correspondence, we've dealt with the meeting minutes. So we are therefore tackling the remaining part of the agenda. Nothing under other business this evening. So I'll look to any notices of motion. I think there may be one coming. Councillor Barkley. And you are muted, Councillor Barkley.
So yeah, I'd like council to be aware that the next meeting, I bring a notice of motion. Forgive me here. Where am I?
In regards to a
in regards to that council requests that the United Counties of Leeds and Granville extend the 60 km/h speed limit on County Road 18 that begins at Somerville and Hurd to all the way to Abbott Road.
Indeed. So this is
Okay.
a notice of motion at Council Barclay, so you'll elaborate further at our next council meeting.
Yeah. Yep. Thanks.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Any other notices of motion, colleagues? Seeing nothing, I'll move on then. We are now at the introduction and consideration of bylaws. I believe Ms. Baccarat Cormier, we've dealt with all of the relevant bylaws. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Thank you. And then we'll just go to questions from the public, from members of our community and the media relating to agenda items. I do believe we may be welcoming Jen Westendorp back. I think she may be with us this evening. I can't quite tell. But certainly, Ms. Baccarat Cormier, can you confirm whether or not we have any questions this evening by email?
I've received no questions, Your Worship.
Okay. And is it Jen Westendorp who registered for the meeting this evening under Zoom?
I believe it is.
Okay. So welcome, Jen. If you'd like to ask a question, you can certainly turn off your mute. But certainly, we're aware that you're now with the Granville Advance, and look forward to seeing you about the community, as has been the case when you've worked for previous media outlets. So great to see you. Not seeing anything from Jen, I'm going to move to close of the meeting, and the confirmation bylaw this evening, colleagues, is that bylaw 5022 to confirm the proceedings of council at its regular meeting held on May 17th, 2022 be adopted and passed. And I'll look for a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Barclay.
No, just a question whether we take this opportunity to go back into closed.
Yes, that is correct.
That's a question
Thank
for the
you,
clerk.
Councillor
Thanks.
Barclay. We will ask the
Okay.
clerk that question.
All right.
Is Baccarat Cormier?
So we are going to go into closed, yes.
So we will not do the confirmation bylaw quite yet.
We'll do that after, I believe.
Indeed. Okay. So thank you very much, Councillor Barclay, for that reminder. I had a feeling I might forget, and this is for a matter that we were unable to address in the closed portion of our meeting that was scheduled for prior to the rest of the agenda. So we will then look for a mover and a seconder to go into closed. And Ms. Baccarat Cormier, I assume you'll stop recording live on YouTube and ensure the relevant parties are in the room. And Councillor Wilson.
That's correct.
You're moving Councillor Wilson to go into closed. Councillor Barclay, thank you.